And for right now, I'm just going to grab the run cycle submissions and have a look at them. And then hopefully it won't take too long. And then if anyone has any questions about this week's assignment, we can address that very quickly. Okay, turn 2, run cycle. There we go. Okay. All right, okay. Height and width. Where are we? There. Height, width. Looking very nice. Very nice. Oh, spoke too soon. That's okay. Shinyu, looks like you got the export settings. Do you have another one?
I can play blast now.
Oh, let me just see, because it looks like there's, yeah, okay, there we are. So yeah, just check. Did it cut it in half? Almost. So it's like, it's almost like it must have been the scale. It's like it cut the scale like to 50% almost. Okay.
Yeah.
That must be what happened there. And everyone else look good to go. Okay, so let's fire those up and we'll have a look at the run cycle. It's gonna load up a little bit. So we'll start with you, Chinyu, okay?
Yep.
It's like side view. So I think you got the major mechanics in there for the arms and the leg, but the thing that's missing is the hip. The hip needs to go up and down. Oh, by the way, whoever's mic is not muted, could you mute your mic? I hear a lot of chatter in the background there, whoever that might be. Thank you. Yeah, so the hip, it's way too level. It's not going up and down. So you got to make sure what you really want is here and here, right? We want to see that low point. You want to make sure the knee bends as that foot goes back. Keep that back leg going back, right? So even when you get to here, don't let this back leg roll forward too quickly. Remember, you're just contacting the ground and then the weight transfers, boom, and you're really kicking up with the back leg before it drives forward. Okay?
Okay.
Get that low point in there, but especially here, this is a great, nice line of action, really strong pose, and it should lead us into the air. This needs to be up, right? So lift the character up in the air, sail upwards, okay?
Okay.
Just to get that up and down. Otherwise, it just feels way too level. It's too flat, okay? And it feels like for one step, there's one part where you have the body rotate this way, but it only happens when the right leg kicks off the ground. For the left leg, it doesn't happen. So it feels like there's just it's almost like they have a twitch or a pull, right? Almost like an injury, like every time the right leg goes back. So it's not symmetric, right? Which means it's very noticeable in a cycle with this one cycle repeating over and over again. Okay. You can also, the twist that I see on the hip, you should put that on the chest. So when you see the hip twisting like that, right? You see the socket is back here and this leg's out in front, then we should be able to see a twist in the back. You should really get that sense that I can feel the back is turning and this arm socket is way out here. You see their back turned towards us. This arm socket is back out there. Really emphasize that twist. Okay, so the chest is twisting as well as the hip.
Okay.
And then, yeah, just update the file size as well. Go
Yeah.
back to the front view. Front view, the only thing I can see is just watch the sliding on the feet. And again, up and down. And it feels like the chest is pointing more to screen right than it does to screen left. So it feels like it's kind of 3/4 the whole time. So just, again, getting that rotation in there will really help. Bit of knee management as well. Sometimes the knees are pointing inward a little bit. So just for those poses, I would just put the knee a little bit more towards the front view.
Okay.
So it doesn't sort of pinch in. It feels like the knees are kind of, it's almost like crossing the legs in midair, right? So it feels like you're getting a little bit of an awkward arc there. Okay, Dong-hee. Looking nice. I think for the contact, when you look here, only thing I would do is maybe try putting the foot under the center line just a little bit more, really minor, just for balance. I think it feels like this side is bending in towards the center line more than this one. This one feels straight down. So double check and see if this just needs to be dragged over a little bit on that side. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, great work. Yeah, if you wanted, one thing you could try is if you look at right here, you're pushing off this direction, right? So you push off here, and then the knee, if you look at the movement from the hip down to the knee, that sort of holds a little bit. What I would try to do is, you can imagine you're pushing that way, you need to overshoot. So there's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of energy. So what I might do is, instead of having the knee fold forward and move forward that quickly, I might actually do this, have it go back a little bit more. And then it will accelerate through a little bit more fast. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically have the same poses, but keep rotating from here. So you would just grab this and just rotate the whole leg just a little bit past that point, just to get a little bit more of an overshoot and then bring it forward. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
But other than that, looking really nice. Great work. Jake. Yeah, similar note in the front view. You could try to just nudge the feet a little bit more under the center line, right? So just a little bit of a lean down. One thing on the head, and I know this is tricky because of the head orientation, the head feels like there's a bit of noise. So when you look at the head, the way that it moves, you can see it kind of goes up and to the left, and then it hits this point, snap, and it comes right back down. Then it kind of goes up. There's a little bit of, if you track the nose, you can see there's a slight little curve going up and then back down. And then on the other side, it's a bit sharper. So sometimes the noise on the head can be coming from the chest. It can be coming from the spine. So see if there's something you can do to kind of calm that down a little, right? It just feels a little bit of a jitter on the head there. Okay.
Yep.
Side view. I think the arms are a bit stiff. What I would try to do is, you're pushing up. One thing you could try to do is the arm has rotated from here. That's its maximum. So it's gone up. Then the next frame, continue rotating this. So overshoot that. Right. So you go from here to here, a little bit of flexing. And then as you swing through, bend even more. And then when you get closer to the extreme, have the elbow snap out a little bit. And again, have it overshoot the mark. So you let the shoulder lead and then straighten out that arm a little bit more. And on the way forward, you could even try to straighten that elbow out quite a bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So just a little bit of loosening up at the elbow, just slightly, just to give it a bit more flexibility there. The arms feel that they're kind of like just one shape the whole time, and that can feel very mechanical, right? A little bit more like an action figure. So just using the elbow slightly. It's just a slight little bounce as well right here. If you look at the wrist, where the wrist is there, then it's there, then it goes in, and then it goes out again. Just watch that. If you wanted to, the spine itself feels like it stays the same shape, kind of looking as it goes up and down. You could try to add a little bit of flexing. So look at where it would compress. So when you hit that low point, then after you hit the low point, having it sort of snap a little bit forward, just a little. I don't want to feel kind of like the tail, right? The tail ball sign was a lot of a whip going on, but just a slight amount would help. Just so it doesn't feel, again, very rigid. Nice work, Jake. Jessica. Now this rig, how do you like this rig, Jessica? This rig is not my favorite rig. It's challenging to get it to feel like it has bones, right? Like it has anatomy. It's challenging, isn't it? Are you there, Jessica? Or did she go to she went to the breakout room, I think. Oops. Oh, well, I think I see her highlighted in the breakout room.
I think, yeah, she's in room 1.
Okay. Should I kick her out?
No, you can broadcast the
I'll move her to the main session. Let's see if I can do that. All right. Did it work? Nope. Let's see. Main session. Nope. I can't. If you want to contact her, let her know, see if she can get out of the room. So I'll wait till she shows up. I'll move on to G1. Hey, you're using Casey's rig. Where'd you get a hold of this thing? Did Casey give you this?
Oh
Huh?
no, it was in rig further.
It was in the rig folder?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. Okay, so when I'm looking at this rig, the main thing is this big flat shape, and we don't see a lot of twist and tilt. So I don't know the rig very well. So that's what I would try to focus on, is getting a sense of twist and tilt so that it feels like that's rotating. Now, because there's no textures and no wireframe, I might be
Oh.
wrong, right? So it feels a little bit flat. So let's have a look at the side view and see if that gives a different picture of how this rig is working. Okay. So this movement here, this is too abrupt. This is too much movement going back and forth, especially with every step. It's very abrupt. So it feels like they're being punched in the nose every third frame, right? So it feels like they're really being knocked back a lot. So you need to calm that down. So look and see what's causing that. If I see the whole chest and the head moving, my guess is it must be, this part doesn't look like it's moving very much, but it could be. But I feel most of the rotation seems to happen in this area here. From this part up, there seems to be rotation. So turn that way down. There's no need to have it rotate that much, okay? That's going to cause a lot of noise. When I'm looking at the shoulders, I don't see the shoulder changing position. So what I mean by that is the shoulder sockets. When I look at the landing pose, right, and then I look over here at the push-off pose, this means that this socket should be further ahead, and then I should be seeing the back of the hip here, and this one would be a little further back to show the twist. So if this is the left leg and this is the right leg, then the arms would do the opposite. The left arm would be back and the right arm would be forward. So we get the twist. Okay. Most important thing, looking at the relationship of the spine to the hips, is they should twist. Right now they don't twist. So they stay facing forward. So we need to get the chest rotating like this and the hip as well. And they need to rotate in opposite directions. So when you look at it from a top view, they exchange positions. Okay. When you're pushing off here, I would see if you could lift the character up higher. This moment, I would go, after this, I would go up higher. So grab the hip, if this is where the hip's position is, the next pose, the next key, lift it up. Go up into the air and then come down and land. Okay. That'll make the run feel a little more believable. In some places, this feels like a fast walk, right? So it feels that we're not in the air for very long. It feels like there's just 1 or 2 frames where we're up in the air, but we're falling. So it's nice to get that sense of a bounce, right? That you're just leaping into the air for a few more frames. Okay.
Okay.
So tone down the movement that's rocking the head back and forth, the whole spine.
Mhm.
And then when you're looking at the spacing on the arms, there's definitely some places you could clean it up. So if you look here, for example, the arm reaches a pose here, and then the next frame, this arm, this part of it doesn't move very much at all, but the elbow moves a lot. And then it feels like that part has frozen. And the only thing that's moving is the chest. So it feels like the arm stops dead for like 3 frames, and then it clicks. So it feels like there's a little bit of an abrupt stop, and then we pick up speed. So think of the arm, especially the upper arm. The basics of it is like a pendulum. You have an extreme on one side and extreme on the other. The difference with the pendulum is it can only fall because of gravity, and gravity is constant, which means the weight goes this way is the same as this way. We have muscles. So our muscles will fire as a gigantic spasm. So they will usually push faster than gravity. So what you would try to do is in the middle, this is where you want to have a big gap. And then you want to sort of crush the spacing here. So when you look at the way you'd animate it, it's like I have a key and I'm pushing through real quick. Push, 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 push. And that will feel a lot more organic than something that's moving evenly, right? More like a pendulum. It'll feel too soft. But if you want the run to really have a lot of energy to it, then it's just push, push, push. So the middle zones, you want to have a bigger gap. So you kind of ease out from the extreme, big spacing, ease in at the other extreme, right? Ease out. And that will make it feel much more organic. It'll feel a lot more cohesive. Okay.
Yep.
So higher lift, more time in the air, and reduce the side to side chatter.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Did Jessica come back? Are you here, Jessica? Are they still in the breakout?
Yes.
Hey, Jessica, how you doing? I was just calling out your shot and then I realized you got stuck in the breakout room. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
That's all right. Where are you? Let's have a look. So this rig, this is a tough rig to use. It's not my favorite rig. Did you like working with it?
No.
Okay.
Too much controllers.
It's challenging, right? So this rig has a very good face. The facial setup is pretty okay. It's got nice controls, but the anatomy of the character is a struggle, right? So very long, thin tube-like proportions, the arms as well. It's
Yeah.
challenging. It's not an easy rig to make look good. Now, from the front view, I think you have a really nice texture, thump, 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 right? So everything's moving nicely.
Mhm.
The one thing I would try to do is avoid having the head kind of go side to side, but
Yeah.
that's really, you know, what the context of the shot is. I don't mind it, but this person seems like they're really not paying attention to where they're going. So it's kind of like you got your headphones on, you're not looking, and they're kind of like just running. That's okay. It's just a run, but I would try for a cycle to keep the head pointing forward.
But
Right.
but
Yeah.
if I like move the controller of the chest,
Mhm.
and then the eyes will automatically follow the.
Oh, okay. So most of the time, again, I don't know the setup of this rig, but there could be, sometimes there's like a little box out in front of
Mhm.
the character, and that's for the eyes, right? So the box is there to sort of, you move the box and the eyes will follow the box, right? And a lot of times it will have an option on it, whether you want it to follow the chest or the hips or be in the world space, so that it will lock in one place and it won't move. So if you move the character, it won't move. So you just check the rig and see if that'll help. Okay.
Got it.
And I know with this character, I'm glad to see you're putting in twist and tilt, but I know its weighting is very limited. So when you twist, it almost feels like it's tearing in some places. What I would change here is I would just try to get the legs under the body, maybe tilt the foot out as much as you can. There's always a risk of some crashing, but what you could do is if the leg is out in front, then you could take this leg and move it out to the side just slightly,
Mhm.
just so that it will dodge, you know, on the middle. You just need to make sure they're not intersecting. You have a bit of room. So I think if you just move it towards the center line a little, that'll help. Okay. There's a couple frames where the arm, this arm, it goes right through. It's behind. It's going to probably crash right through the chest, right? So you see like it's behind and here. So it feels a little bit odd that it kind of just goes right through the body. So you got to track the arc a little bit. So my suggestion would be take the arm and rotate it out to the side a little bit so you can see the hand.
Mhm.
And then here, don't bring it so far in front of the body right away. So you can kind of, there's the hand coming up and then bring it up. And maybe you could sort of back that off just a little and then reach that point there. Okay, just to kind of get a little bit of an arc in the front view. And then do the same thing on the other side.
Yeah.
Side view. You see there's a little double bounce on here. You can see that the elbow, if you look at from the elbow to the wrist, right, you go back. So we see that it goes back, it goes forward, forward, back, back, forward. So it almost feels like they're knocking on a door. Right, so there's a little double tap over there. And then when you bring this forward, again, you can see it's intersecting. So you just got to work with the upper arm control and lean the arm out. You may have to sort of chicken wing the arms out to the side a little, so they're not so close to the body, but just lean them out to the side. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think in this view, one of the things, again, it's a big shape change, is this angle. Having it change this much means the head moves from being over here to being over there. So that's a big range of movement. So it feels very abrupt. What I would try to do is look at the changes that you want and say, well, okay, if I was to rotate the hip back, so if I tilt the hip back, right, what you're usually looking at is this idea of, I have these objects, I have the head, and I have the chest, and I have the hip. So if I take the hip and I move it forward and I tilt it, then I can take chest and I can tilt it that way, and I can keep the head in the same place, right? But these will counter each other. And then if I do the reverse, right, I can also point the hip forward and I can still keep the head in the same place. So it's like being able to sit in your chair and kind of do this, right? And that's what we want to try to do in the run cycle, so that the head doesn't move forward and back a lot, right? Because if you try and run that way, you can see that's a lot of work, right? It's wasted energy and it feels weird, and then it looks off. So what I try to do is see what's making the head move back. And it looks like it's got to be a control here. I see kind of a bend. So maybe it's a control here, which means that that's working all on its own. And what should happen is then the control at the bottom should do the opposite. So if this is rotating the character back, then the other control should rotate it forward, and they counter each other. Okay, so if you see the head go back, try to figure out what's causing that. Why is it rotating back? And then see if you can use another control to rotate it forward. So you still get the change in shape that you want, but the head and torso don't move so much.
Yeah.
Okay. With a character like this, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I hide and unlock locked all the most of the controllers on the face, but still break one on the mouse. You can see.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not even paying attention to the face. No big deal. I think you could probably get more twist and tilt. I see that you are moving the chest and the shoulders a little bit. You could try a little more, right? If you want to have a bigger arm swing, it just might feel a little bit more energy. And I would try to maybe, when you reach the high point, look at that line and you see how much you fall. You could really ease out. So the idea is you hit this high point, and the next frame you want to just barely move, right? So just barely fall down so that you get a stronger feeling of acceleration. It's just like the bouncing ball at the top of the arc. You want to just barely move and save that for the down. So it's got a bit more texture to it. Okay. So really ease out, and then you have like bigger spacing just before you hit the ground, right? Big hit. And here, watch your arc. If you look at that, it feels a lot like a straight line. So what I would try to do is maybe take this position over, and then you have like at least 3 points on a triangle, right? So you get a bit of an arc in there. Okay. And then here, even though it's just one frame, flap that foot down really strong. It'll show weight. And watch the ground plane. I'm not sure if that point is the same as that point in terms of the height. That looks lower than this one. So it doesn't feel like it's the consistent ground. So put a polyplane, just put a flat plane in there and make sure that you can see if the foot is floating or if it's actually on the ground on the geo. Okay. And the other thing, when you do the play blast, you can see 17 is the same as 1. And that creates a little artifact. When things loop, it means that that image is held for 2 frames. All the others are held for 1. So you might feel a little bit of a stick. It might feel like one side just holds a little bit, and it feels just a little bit odd when it loops. So play blast 1 to 16. Just delete 17.
Right.
Just for the looping video. You need 17 to animate, but when you play blast, just 1 to 16. All right. Make sense, Jessica?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. All right. I'm going to test out my microphone, Flora. Are you there? Did Flora, or she went to the chat room? I'm going to pour some Pepsi, and we'll see if this makes people really annoyed here. Can you hear the fizzle?
ASMR Pepsi.
Who wants a Coke right now? Yeah.
I could go for one.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a Coke or a Pepsi guy, Brett?
Well, Pepsi's just easier to get at the Safeway where we are. They always have the caffeine-free, diet-free one for us old folks, right? No sugar, no caffeine.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think I lean more towards Pepsi than Coke. But
I don't think I've had a Coke in like 3-4 years.
There was a long time where I drank root beer all the time and Coke not so much.
Mhm.
And then I sort of did some research on Coca-Cola, and I found out it's actually one of the last phosphate drinks out there. And the reason it's so refreshing is because it has that phosphoric acid in it.
Yeah, which dentists love to hear you use, right? Because it's like way to scrape off the enamel off the old teeth.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
know. It's
But-
just, it's too bad it's so tasty. I just can't control myself.
Yeah, and it's that's why it's so refreshing. It's actually cinnamon flavored. Not sure if you knew that.
Coke, really? I
Coke
didn't know
is
that. Mm.
yeah, it's cinnamon flavored.
Wow, that's so funny. I mean, one of my teachers in high school, he said one of his aunties, because back when Coke came out, Coke used to have cocaine in it, I don't know if anybody's aware of that, but the original Coca-Cola formula had cocaine in it because it was an addictive product, which is really good to guarantee sales. But his auntie, she couldn't get to the day until she had a case of the original Coke that had cocaine in there. She would drink like literally a case a day.
A case, like a 12 pack of
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
goodness gravy.
Yeah. And that was with all the sugar too. So yeah.
I can't even
There's-
imagine the teeth after all that Coke.
I think at that point you're like, I don't care. Give me wooden teeth. I don't care anymore. Just
I
like,
just need my cocaine.
I'm pretty sure I read that they still use like coca leaves, and they're still like one of the main importers of like coca leaves to like places like Colombia where they make
Oh,
like
really?
cocaine. Yeah.
it's interesting. I'm surprised the cartels let them have any of it. I think-
No, well, like they supply the cartel is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
Who's to say
Oh
that
my
they're not the
God, that's
cartel
so
them-
funny.
They
Yeah.
are the cartel.
Yeah, yeah, you never know. It's a crazy world we live in.
It is.
So I'll drink Pepsi instead. All right, Jonathan, is this is the Thep rig, right? This is Thep. Okay, so I like this rig. It's cartoony. I think one of the big notes I would give is the hip. It feels like it's not going up enough, and it feels like for one pose, the height feels higher than the other one. So watch the translate Y. So when you look at the translate Y in the graph editor, just have a look. There's going to be a high point, there's going to be a low point, and see if the high point and low point, they should repeat. They should be the same number. If one is really up and the other one is not so up, it will just be asymmetric, and it'll be very noticeable because we only have 2 steps. Cycling all over the place. If you did like a cycle of 10 different steps, then you could add a little bit of variety in there and it would feel pretty organic. When you push off like this from this pose, one thing that's really important is make sure that this leg, which is really pushing this way, continues. So you could just take this pose and just rotate it. So it feels like we're still pushing through. We still have that energy so that the knee doesn't break this way. When the knee breaks like this, it feels like there's force being applied right here. And we want to trick the audience into thinking that the force is still here at the hip, that we're moving that forward. Or sorry, moving that backward, okay? And then the poses will look a little bit better when you get to the landing pose. This pose would be more like this, okay? Also, if you look at the hands, right, what happens when the computer drives is right at the passing position, both arms will line up perfectly. You can see the other finger right here. They're basically twinned. So what I always try to do is favor where I'm coming from. If I don't know what to do, I'll look at this arm. That arm's going this way. So let's just lean it a little bit more towards where we're coming from, right? So I'll push that one there. And then the other arm on the other side, I would lean again back, just so that that silhouette doesn't line up perfectly with everything twinned. Okay, so you could easily caricature that a little bit more ease in and ease out. The arms are moving a bit evenly spaced, and that's why they just line up perfectly. So you have this, push through, push through, push through. Okay, there's a little bit of noise on the head going back and forth, and especially if you look at the neck, right? So it moves forward and then it holds and it comes back. So there's a little bit of an arc issue here. So if you look at that point, right, I'm here, I go there, then I go down, and then I kind of hold, then I go right back. And to figure out what's going on, the first thing I would fix is do the up and down, get the up and down in the hip, really get that going, bouncing ball. And then look and see what is making this part of the spine go back. Is it a rotation from the hip? Is it all the way from the base? And I'm just leaning this thing forward and back. That might be too much. So you'd have to get rid of that rotation or kill it and then say, well, okay, well, if I'm moving this back, if that's the chest, then I have to do counter animation like I was demonstrating in a previous example. So if I'm using one part of controls to move the head, forward, then I have to use the bottom controls to move it back so that in the side view, it still goes up and down, but it doesn't like loop forward and back too much because it's just so much noise. It's hard to make that feel believable. Okay. Make sense? Yeah, and also have a pass on the arcs of the ankles. If you look at where the ankles go, they go here, click, 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 click. And then there's like a really straight corner. And what you could do is just look at that point, and that one, and say, okay, here to here, I get a really strong corner. So what I could do is I could take this pose and I could push that out a little bit further. And then I could have this one straightening down and then hit the landing. Okay. And when you get to this pose, look at the speed. Make sure that from here to here, the last point, this should all be evenly spaced so that it's linear. Whenever a foot hits the ground and you're doing an on the spot treadmill kind of cycle, as soon as you have a foot hit the ground, from there right to the last moment has to be a straight line, so it's evenly spaced. Otherwise, you have some positions where you travel more and other positions you travel less, and it won't work as a treadmill. It'll sort of make the treadmill look like it's speeding up and slowing down. Right. Julieta, looking nice. It's just a little bit of wobble on the foot, but it looks like you're pivoting on the ball. So just from the front view, it just feels like that line just slides over a little bit.
Okay.
So just double check that. There's a couple places where like the knees are kind of pointing inward. So you could just grab the pole vector for the knee and just try to line it more forward so it doesn't pinch in just a little bit out to the side. Okay. It's pretty minor, but just make sure it doesn't pinch in too far. Just that silhouette feels like really, really pinched in.
Okay.
Yeah. What did I do here? And arcs on the arms. Let me look at the side view for that. Ah, it feels a little bit like are these set to IK? Are you working with the wrist?
No, they are FK.
They are FK. Okay. So let's see what I would try to do here. It's just right in here. It feels a lot like an IK movement just because of the wrist. It feels like it moves almost in a straight line, not as big an arc. So let's look at the spacing. So for the arm, right from here to here, I think that movement, there's a lot going on. So I would try to ease out. So if you look here, you kind of swing in and you bring this forward. That's good. And what I would try to do is right now, the arm feels like it's moving up. It feels like it's getting retracted up. I would try instead to make it feel like that arm is moving down. So you start the rotation, keep the shoulder pinned.
From the clavicles.
Ah, okay.
I move them up like in frame 3 and 11, I think.
Okay, so the clavicle might be pulling the whole arm up a little bit.
Should I move them down?
No, I like having the extreme. That's nice. I would probably keep that pose as the extreme up and then start to bring them down as you swing through. So just take this pose and drop it down. So if you're starting here, it would just be a little bit lower. And you could even fold that arm up even more. And then really push through. So you have that extreme on the other side, and then have the elbow open up a little bit.
Okay.
Right? So that you kind of pull the arm, you kind of fold it up, pull it back, and then the elbow would be the last thing to kind of retract. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And the way that I've timed that out, that may not work exactly, but that's what I would try to do. My guess is from here to here, you could probably really keep the poses just barely moving, just ease out just a little bit and then push more through the middle, right? Okay. So some of the stuff that I drew here, it might be happening too early. What might happen is if you do that, you might have this weird thing where it's like poop and then elbow, poop and then elbow. It might not work as like a proper run, but see if you can just extend that idea through and just have the elbow follow through. As you're moving forward, again, one nice thing to show is like when you start swinging the arm forward, you could straighten it out. You could almost have like a straight arm just for one frame and then snap over and just see how that feels. It may look a little weird, but when you see it in movement, it really does help kind of give that sense of energy that like the elbow locked for just one frame and it gets pushed forward. Okay. That's the side view. Sorry?
I copied the curves from the elbow to the wrist. Is that a good idea or is that not working?
Oh, if you move the wrist that much, it might feel really loose, like somebody's running, you know, like without very, very loose hands, right? So I think it's okay to keep the wrist fairly tight, but you could try and do a little bit of drag on the wrist just because we have so few controls. So right here, this is good. You have like the wrist is dragging behind, it's dragging behind the action of the arm. So I think what you're doing is fine. If anything, I would say the hand pose, it's very flat and planar, right? So it's just like the default rig pose. So what you could do is the easiest thing to do is to just, you know, curl the hands up into fists and just have them run with closed fists just to see if that looks a little bit better. It's a very limited rig, so there's not much you can do. Like the thumb is terrible. It's like it's very limited. It's very basic. It's not going to give you beautiful poses, and it's flat by nature. So I would just do anything that helps fight that. Even if you just relax the thumb a little bit, right? Just a little bit of a curve, and just had the idea that the fingers were kind of curled in a little bit, just so it felt a little less like a mannequin. Okay. And there's just a few places where the legs, what I would do here is if you look at where the foot is, check the spacing. Right there, and then here. Right, so you have two poses that are almost the same. So what I would do here is this pose probably needs to be like this. This foot should be coming off the ground to connect to this one. And you could probably even push that one up a little bit more. So push off, okay? But looking pretty nice. There's a little bit of noise on the head. So right here between frame 5 and 7, the neck juts forward and it looks like the chest is moving. So I think that might be too much movement over a short amount of frames. So look at where that movement is coming from, what is causing the neck to move forward, and either reduce it or try to spread it out over more frames, one of the two choices, because it moves the head quite a bit. And what happens is the head takes basically like a corner. It goes down and then forward. So it feels kind of like there's a little strong, like almost bird-like, right, that snaps out. So it's okay if you want to kind of build a little bit of movement in the head, but it's trying to figure out if anything feels like straight and then it juts out, that feels odd. So if you would take that corner and say, well, can I smooth out that corner? If it's happening over just like 2 frames like this, then I need to take this position and nudge that a little bit more forward to get towards there, so that when I snap out the head and neck, and even here, I hit like the maximum here and then it locks. So it's like I'm forward and then I go up. So I get another corner. So you could keep that movement here. You could say, well, this extreme position, I could delay that and maybe put it 2 frames later. This extreme position here, let's delay that. So you just try to spread it out over more frames so that you still get the head movement, the flexibility. And again, check if it feels too bird-like it's really snapping around. It's kind of funny, but it's going to be distracting. Front view, you may not notice it, but the side view, it might feel like too bird-like. And people are like, yeah, it feels like somebody's dancing while they're running. You know, it feels like Jim Carrey kind of, you know, bopping around. You might want to just calm it down. And it's really figuring out where it's coming from. It could be, it feels like it's the chest, right? So it feels like the change in shape I'm feeling from here to here, that changes the most. So it could just be that segment. But have a look at all 3 controls and see where it's coming from the spine. All right, nice work.
Thank you.
Matt, another droid. Okay, I think I would probably put the legs under the body a little bit more. And I know it's a droid, but you could probably get a little bit more flexing out of it. I think here, the hip is pointing and the chest are pointing 3/4 right. So opposite twist. So even if it's a droid, have the chest oppose the legs a little bit more if you can. And then if you look at the way they go up, right, they kind of push up and then they hit that high point, right? And then they drop down. So it feels very abrupt. It feels almost like hitting something and snapping down. So hit that high point and again, ease out, right? The next position, just barely move if you can. And then you see you hit the low point, you hit, and then you don't go down anymore. So this is just the contact pose. We should hit that. And then 2 frames later, we should be even lower. So it gives you a nice change. We have a bum, right? So it's the contact and the down, just to make that feel a little bit more like you needed time to absorb that weight. Yeah, so if you look at where the low point is, you have the low point here. The low point should be here. So if you have like the curve for the up and down, right now, this low point is just at the wrong frame. You could just slide it over 2 frames, right? And then you get very similar idea. But if you just move the hip up and down, it may mess with the feet. So my suggestion would be rather than just sliding a curve around, I would probably try instead to just say, well, look, I'm hitting that low point. Let's just make a point and drag it down. Let's just go past a little bit further for the low point and then come back up. So that way you keep the same timing you've already got and the posing should work, but it's just, you just need to just hit a little bit lower. Okay. And you can really see there's a nice push off the ground. You accelerate up, but then you hit that wall, boom, and then drop down. Okay. I think you could easily put a bigger swing on the arm for the back position. I think one of the things silhouette wise is it will feel almost like the arm is connecting to the hip because it doesn't break the silhouette in side view. So what I would do is just get that arm out from the silhouette of the body. The front that one's working really easy, right? Very easy to see. But the back position feels like it's held too close to the hip. Okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Nice. Nadia. Nadia, looking good. I think it's just up and down. It's way too level. Definitely need some up and down. There's some spacing issues with the feet. Again, have a look at that point there and that point there, and it should be a straight line. So you just go and say, well, from there to there, find the halfway point, halfway point, halfway point, linear. So you grab the foot. If this is the translate Z, you find that point in the graph editor, and then the end point, you find that one in the graph editor, straight line, A to B. Okay? Does that make sense, Nadia? That'll clean up the spacing there. This is not an easy character to have run with those big canoe feet. It's not easy. So I think that would really help, because here it feels like they slow down, and then we see like the toe goes through. So definitely fewer frames at the other side would make life easier. When you lift the foot up, again, the foot's going this way, so should the knee. So what you have to do is adjust the position so that the thigh doesn't roll forward too quickly, right? Because now what happens is this goes forward, then it goes that way. So you get a lot of noise on the knee, a little bit of chatter. So at this point, it would probably still be back, and you'd be lifting the foot up, and then you would start to bring that leg forward and then snap it around and then get that extreme. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. But big thing, up and down. The hip is too level. And it looks like you're moving the hip up, but it's the isolated hip. So you're getting squash and stretch here. You can see how much that's tearing, right? I wouldn't use that for up and down. It's nice to add a little bit of flexing, a little bit of jiggle, but make sure you use the main hip control. Move the whole character up and down. They need to leap in the air a little bit more. Okay?
Okay.
And another thing, now I'm looking at this, twist. You have to twist the hip and the chest. So what we should see here is we should be able to see the front, right, of the hip. So it should be turned towards us, and then the chest, we would see the back. So it'd be like a twist. Then that arm would be here, right? So then this arm would be there. Okay, so more twist. So that means this and this, but on the hip as well. So twist the hip and twist the chest. Okay. And you don't have to do as much as I'm doing here, right? But just you need a little bit of twist happening. Otherwise, this feels very locked, and it feels like an action figure where it's just shoulder and no chest, no spine. Cool. Nicholas. Nice. Good up and down. Cool. I think with this rig, there's just a weird thing that happens here. If you look at sort of that shoulder just kind of disappearing, so it might be some weighting issues. Let's have a look at the side view. How is this rig to use, Nicholas?
It's okay. I think the up and down stuff is just like me moving the scapulas up and down or whatever.
Yeah, maybe it seems like
Not
maybe
the
that
scapulas, but
the shoulder.
Mhm.
Yeah, it feels like that's just dropping down a bit low. I think you have a really nice idea to kind of get that flexibility, but maybe it's just on the wrong control, right? Sometimes it's just not weighted in a way that you can actually do that without it tearing, right? It feels like it's kind of pulling the geo there. Yeah, nice. Again, watch the spacing on the ground. Again, from here to here. This feels like a smaller distance. That's big and that's less. And then that's bigger and there. So just make sure it's even. Then you can see we kind of cluster here and then kick up. So again, a lot of speed. So when you're at this point, the next pose, you should kick that foot right off the ground, and it should really follow through, and then ease in up at the top, right? As you start to bring that foot forward. Fold it up and then bring it forward. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Just a little bit more flexing there. The arms, again, this is like, it depends on how somebody's running. The character's running with arms that feel very loose. So they feel quite straight as they're at the side, moving them forward. So what you could try to do is you could try to tighten up the elbow and get a little bit more of a traditional pose where the elbow's bent most of the time.
Mhm.
This definitely feels more like somebody who's just running, you know, just because they have to, but they don't want to. It's like, I'll run, okay, but very low energy. So if you tense the arms up more, you can still loosen the elbows up a little bit as they swing, but it feels like they're in a very small range of movement. They're not really going in front of the body and behind the body as much as you could.
Mhm.
Okay, nice work. Orlando. Okay, similar note, up and down. Let's have like the side view. So I think you could definitely put more up and down. So I think here especially, this is where you're pushing off right here from 16 to 1. The hip stays in the same spot. So we're pushing up. If you look at 15 to 16, we're going up. And I think this is the push off from the ground. You should go up even more and then stay in the air and then fall. You're stopping the hip. If you look at the hip, it stops before a foot hits the ground. So this is your low point and the foot hasn't even hit yet. So watch the up and down. That seems to be the big thing that's missing here.
Okay.
Okay.
I got it.
Spacing on the arms and even the legs, it's very even. And in some places it's a little off. Like the way the arms are moving. Again, we have like twinning right in the middle. The arms are almost lining up perfectly, you know, in the silhouette. So again, favor where you're coming from. I'm coming from here. The computer might give you a pose like this. Favor where you're coming from. Break the silhouette and favor where you were at the extreme. So instead of doing exactly 50%, favor back a little bit. So that way you get sort of push through, and it'll just snap around the other side and look more appealing.
Okay.
You could definitely put some more twist on this. I can see that you're moving the chest, so that's good, but the hip, I don't see it twisting. So I can see there are poses where I can see the front of the chest, and then there are poses where I can see the back, but the hip always stays the same side view. So if you are twisting it, it's just a little bit subtle. You could try a little more.
Yeah, I twisted, but
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think here, it also feels very isolated. There's like a big change when you look at the angle over one frame. The character snaps back from pointing this way, from this point to pointing this way. Man, why does my values keep changing here from the drawing tool? Don't know what keyboard shortcut I'm hitting, but this you could easily spread out over more frames because then it locks, right? So we have just one frame. It's like click, click, and it introduces a ton of noise. So the head will just jut out over one frame. And you can see like it's here, forward, stop, forward, stop, stop, forward, back.
Mhm.
So it becomes very noisy. It feels almost like in stepped mode. So have a look and see. My guess is it looks like most of the change is happening in this upper segment right here. So look and see whatever that rotation is. It might be, I don't know with Norman, but my guess is it would be a rotate X, but you got to check. So I know it's rigged a little bit weird. Whatever is causing the chest to rotate like this in side view, you want to look and see. I think it's too much. I would get rid of it or scale it way down and especially have it happen over more frames. Just a one frame pop, it's too erratic. It's too noisy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Got it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Parker, you're welcome. How you doing, Parker?
Doing good.
Excellent. A little bit of drift on the foot. So it kind of feels like there's like a couple of frames where it's really close to the landing. So what I might do is just use this one. So get it on the ground sooner. So it doesn't sort of ease in. It feels like it's sort of just landing with thrusters on, right? To sort of slow the descent.
Right.
Let it hit the ground pretty hard. And there's a couple bits here where the knee kind of pokes out to the side. So you have like here, here, here. This would just be a pole vector fix. So you just go this one frame and just yoink, move that back in, get that
Yeah.
working.
That was a really weird issue I had, and I was looking through it, and I kept, you know, I fixed I think 3 or 4 things with that because the IK was just
Sometimes when you lift the leg up quite high, when it gets close to where the top joint is in the chain, that's where it will freak out. So it might be that it's just lifted up a bit too high. The same thing happens if you lift the leg up very high here. As soon as it gets to the same height as the hip, it doesn't know where to point, and the knee can actually invert, right? Because it doesn't know which direction to point. It hits the top level of the chain.
that was one of the really exaggerated ones I had was the gray leg actually went fully sideways to the
Ah, okay.
the other foot.
Yeah. I would try to move it in a bit more on the center line if you can. Point the toes out a little bit. Let's look at the side view. Yeah, try to frame again. I think the last assignment too. Try to make sure we see the whole thing, right? So we don't chop off the head. So that way, when Flora's creating this, you can see if you're easing in and out. So that looks good. I like the ease out at the top. That's nice. Landing. I think it's just, yeah, this point here, the foot's not locking to the ground. So all you have to do, you have the room. So all you need to do is just make sure this position, I would say you could probably bring the leg down, right? And really make sure it hits the ground, then bend. You have the room, easy, right? Just drop this over and then push through.
Mhm.
With the arms, again, if you look at the middle, the arms are kind of in similar positions. So what I would do is take this arm and favor this way and take the other arm and favor that way. So that way you have a bit more ease out. So you keep the spacing pretty close. You don't have it move too quickly until you need to, and just push through the middle and accelerate back a little bit stronger. If you look at the back position, the change here, right? So you hit that extreme, right? You could definitely flex the elbow. So you could like straighten it out a little. So if you have something that's a little bent, you could straighten it out a little. So you kind of show that the elbow is still going back a little more as you go forward, just to loosen it up. And the same thing here, where you reach this extreme, then you would just sort of start with, okay, well, then I'll have that arm follow through and I could bend it back. Right, so you kind of bend the arm a little bit more forward on the way back and then push it straighter on the way forward, just a little,
Okay.
just to loosen it up. Pretty close, just a few things. Another minor thing would be like the neck is it's very straight. That's the default for Norman. So I would probably move the neck forward and push the head a little bit forward, just so it feels a bit more natural. Okay, it's kind of feels like really this, right? It's very straight. So just to make it feel a little more organic.
Gotcha.
Good. Roger. Okay. Very smooth. It feels a little bit slow because of that. So it feels like most of the movement I see is side to side, and I'd rather see up and down. So looking at the front view, what I would suggest is look at your spacing and let's see how far you're pushing up into the air. It feels like you could definitely keep going up. So this point, after, keep the hip going up. It feels like we kind of go down too quickly, and that sort of flattens the acceleration. Look at this foot position. Look what happens to the leg. The leg, it's pushing off. The whole leg should continue to go back, right? So get to this point, then have it keep accelerating back a little bit more, get that leg up, have the hip go higher, right? So you don't just have it start to fall right away. So it feels like it's a very, very weighted run. It feels like something is pulling the character down a little bit early. Okay. But the nice thing is your splining is really nice. It's very smooth. I see you've got a lot of offsets. So it's in a really good place in terms of like getting smooth movement, a lot of offsetting. That's really good. But the spacing is what feels a little even. So it feels a little bit flat. So I think with the arm movements, it's very even. You could try to get a little bit more texture in there. So that's like you have like a big spacing gap. So right now everything's very even, but it's moving very smoothly. So I would sort of favor your extremes and then push through the middle just to get a stronger sense of acceleration. You really need to push the character up more. So at this point, have them keep going up for a few more frames before they fall. Okay. But it's very nicely polished. You did a really good job splining. Okay, Roger?
All right, thank you.
Yeah, nice work. Sarah.
Yep.
Nice. Now from the front view, the arms are really close to the body. So one thing I would do is maybe open them up a little bit more as you're running, just so it doesn't feel so orthographic.
Okay.
Side view, let me just can I zoom in a little bit. There we go. Yeah, similar note. So if you look at the middle point, both arms are kind of forward, right? So like the passing position, you could try to favor the arms a little bit more towards where they were coming from so that they don't go too far forward. So it feels like the arm that's the back position accelerates forward much quicker than the other one. And what happens in the side view is you get this weird sort of optical illusion. This is the right arm, right? And this is the left arm. And right there, it feels like the arm jumps across. Like your eye will not see movement. It will see like a little, it's like an on-off switch for a light. It won't feel like it's moving anymore. So it creates this weird little optical illusion just for those couple frames where they change positions, right? Like look at this hand. This is the left one, and then this is the right one. Right? So it just creates this weird, again, from a side view, optical illusion where they replace each other in the same pixel space, and it stops feeling like they're moving, and it feels like something just all of a sudden right there, there's a jumble of movement. So it's a bit chaotic. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Same note with the neck. You could lean that forward. got good twist up and down. The arcs on the feet are looking like you paid attention to them pretty nice. You could loosen up the elbow a little if you wanted, just slightly, just to kind of get a little bit of bend at the elbow on the extreme. So straighten on the way forward and then just bend up at the extreme on the way at the front position. That would help loosen up. But
Yep.
otherwise, really good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go. Oh, did somebody annotate 15?
Yeah, I was trying to say you have 15 minutes left
Ah!
without
Nice.
interrupting.
That was very subtle for. I like that. I was like 15. Nice. Good work. Okay, Sasha. Looking good. I think there might just be a little bit of sliding on the feet, but it's very minor. I'm not sure if I'm even seeing it, if I'm just hallucinating. Looking good. Let's have a look. Quarter view. Nice. Yeah, nice. I think here again, the sort of bird-like feeling for the head and the neck, I don't mind it, but that would be something that I would experiment with. Is like, is that too much? Right? Go have a look at Tom Cruise running in any movie in a side view, and then have a look. And I bet you he's not doing this so much. Right, a little bit more tight, and it's just figuring out where that comes from. So if the chest is really going back, it's going to pull the whole neck and head. So the only choice you would have is to rotate the lower abdomen or the hip forward. So what you would look at is the distance you're going back here. You want to sort of lean forward here. So I would just try scaling it back a little bit. And again, it's not wrong. It's just a different texture. It's just a different way of animating. The arms, I think, are a bit evenly spaced. So what I would try to do is, again, ease out and then push through the middle. You have, again, similar optical illusion artifacts in the side view where like this is the arm that's closest to us. And then the next frame, it's the arm on the opposite side. So they exchange positions. And that can make your eye get confused in there. So if you favor a little bit more where you're coming from, if you do stuff like, as I move this arm forward, I'm going to straighten at the elbow, right? So it's going to feel different than the other arm. It will help your eye track it a little bit better. So you can sort of straighten that arm out and then keep it straighter until you reach your apex here. And the same thing as you get to this point, then have the elbow follow through.
Okay.
Right. And that'll help as well, just to loosen up the arm a little. So it just feels a little bit like there's a little bit of flexibility in there.
Okay.
But other than that, great work.
Thank you.
Sion.
Hello.
Hello. So for this rig, again, it's very blocky. This doesn't feel as balanced as it could. I would definitely move the legs underneath the body as much as you can. And the other thing is looking at the twist. It's hard to see here, but it feels like the chest is twisting side to side, but I don't get a sense that the hips are. Let's have a look at the side view. There we go. Okay. So here we have a bit of issue with the height. So we can see the hip. It feels a bit flat in terms of the height. We can see this level, it's not going up and down very much. And then here we just drop and the whole thing moves back. So at this point, this is where we're pushing off. So this pose should be much higher. So think of it as I'm here, there's my leg, and then I'm going to push up. So if I was here, I'm going to go here. Right, so you go up in the air, and then watch out for changes like this. When you see that like the body all of a sudden changes from being here to here, that's going to introduce some noise in the side view. So it feels like it's being pushed. It feels like I'm here for a long time, and then over a short range of frames, I snap back. And what you'll see is the head in particular, right? You'll be locked onto that. It feels like something is pushing the character. So you got to get the character going up and down more, right? So it needs more height. And then also track the arcs of the feet. If you look at the spacing here, the spacing kind of clusters. You can see that ankle is very close to where it was for 3-4 frames, and all of a sudden it just drops down. So make sure you figure out where the spacing should be focused and that it doesn't just bunch up right here. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Need some work. And
Thank you.
you're welcome. See how.
Hello.
Nice work. In the front view, it's a bit orthographic, like it's a bit perpendicular to the vertical, a lot of this stuff. And it looks like some of the arm, this feels a bit broken. The neck is coming out of the chest here. So watch some of the transformations that are going on are a bit extreme. So especially here, I think the shoulder's up a bit too high. So just watch the posing. And I think it's just trying to get that foot underneath. And I would probably turn the foot out to the side a little like that. And, you know, one nice trick is when you have like this kind of a line, like I'm doing that, I want this. I have the head, then I have the hip would be kind of like, okay, I'll tilt that down. And I've got this, and I'll have the arm do the opposite. So now I've got this arm up at the side. I got this one out at the back. So you look at sort of lines where you can kind of counter things. I know it's tough with Norman because he's so segmented. Let's see what we got here. The up and down looks good. Flatten out the foot, right? As soon as you can really get away with a lot. It's just like a boom, right? Flatten it out to show weight. The spacing of the arms, I think that's okay. But I think the shoulder's just too far up. It's really pinching, right? Yeah, right there. So just, it feels like the amount that you're moving the shoulders too much. It really is pinching the geo there. And again, it feels like it's kind of stuck to the jaw, right? It's really high up. You could lean the neck forward as well. And then here, look what happens. I think you're translating the shoulder. You see how much all the geo is pushed down? So if you're using translation, try to use just rotation. See if you can just use the clavicle and rotate up and down and see if that behaves better. I know sometimes the controls let you do both. I'll always try rotation first, because if you look at how compressed that is to here, that's like a squash and stretch, and that's causing a big change on the arm. And it stays relatively the same. So the same angle, but a big change on the shoulders. That's what feels odd. And the same thing with that arm. So it just calls attention to itself. And then the cycle, if you look at where your cycle ends at 31, there's a big pop to the next one. So I'm not sure if you're cycling this at the right frame. So see if we can find that same frame. It looks like maybe you should be hitting here, right? So if that's 1, it should be 17. That should be like the
trying to
range.
make it longer, but the number is not right.
Yeah, that's okay. So I think if we did that, that's better. There we go. Just don't go past 17. Yeah. Okay, so a little bit of spacing issues on the arms and just watching the clavicle. It seems to be the main thing. Okay.
Okay.
Excellent. Thanks for the warning, Flor. We've got 9 minutes left. Anybody got any questions about the assignment for when we meet on Monday? What's going to be due? Maybe what I'll do is I'll just close all the rooms. So if anybody's in the breakout room, I'm going to bring them back to the main room.
Just remind me, do you for this work in progress, do we need to have the disc being separated from the hand?
If you can figure out the setup, great. If you can use the constraint and then turn it off, that would be great. But I would prefer just worry about getting the animation blocked in and then attach the sphere, the disc. But what I would,
then
yeah, I would really start on the first pose and try and set that up. So if you're able to connect the object, then pose with it, but don't worry about letting it go. Right? You can just animate as if they're holding it the whole time.
For sure.
If you can, great, but it's not the priority. So as long as you understand how to do the constraint, we can always attach the object afterwards and just make sure it's going to fit in there nicely. But I would try to figure it out with the blocking. And if you run into problems, then don't worry about it, but bring those problems to class. And then, you know, Flora and I can help everybody if we need to, like, okay, share a screen. Let's see what's going on, just to see where the issue is. Okay. So I wouldn't just ignore it completely. Do a little test, make sure that it makes sense. You know how to set up a constraint, you know how to key the objects, you can have it attached, have it unattached, so that on Monday when have class again, it won't be so strange and sort of foreign. You'll be like, I don't remember what the hell I was doing. Just if there's any problems, let's try and fix it in the class.
For sure.
Okay. So what I'll be checking on Monday is just your posing. I just want to see how the poses are going, if there's any issues there, and then just any technical issues. And you still have 2 more days. It's not due, the final's not due Monday, the final's due Wednesday, 9 p.m.
Okay.
Okay, so just to remind everybody, the 21st. I can't believe April went by that quick. Holy cow, right? It's just amazing.
It feels
So-
like just yesterday that begun.
Yep, April Fools, and then all of a sudden it's over.
Mhm.
So the 21st, Wednesday, 9 p.m. is the due date for this. Again, I can't speak yet. I haven't got full confirmation of what's going on with the machines over the week 9, but remember that that's the last day of the term, 26th to the 30th. Usually the school is closed to students anyway. So even if we were all together, as if COVID never happened. They would boot you out of the school. You would have no access to the machines, and IT is doing a ton of maintenance. The building, they do a lot of maintenance as well. Anything with plumbing, anything with computers, they may be redoing a lot of the machine's imaging. I don't know what that means for Teradici Access, if they're going to send out an email and say, yeah, it's going to be down certain days, or if it's going to be like, don't bother the whole week. It'll be ready the following Monday. So when we start back Monday, the 3rd of May, that's the start of the new term, everything should be working. But I don't know anything else, right? It really depends on what IT has got planned. Okay, but just make sure, this being the last week, all your important work should be moved to your H drive. If you have anything on a local machine, a desktop, a documents folder, that will not be saved if they re-image, right? So anything that's on the desktop or on the C drive is going to be replaced when they re-image the machine. It'll be wiped out. So all the stuff that you want backed up, just make sure it's on your H drive. The H drives are safe. All right, and particularly, I know not everybody uses Teradici because they can't always get it to work properly. If you're working from home on your own machine, again, it's a really good idea at the end of the term to just go through your backup systems and make sure they're working, make sure that you have your backups. Try to put everything important on the cloud, because again, just because you have a hard drive beside your computer doesn't mean that's a good backup. Somebody forgets to turn off the sink on the apartment upstairs and the water pours in, it ruins your machine and your backup all at the same time. So try to have a cloud backup, just so that there's no reliance on anything physical in the apartment, that it's all up on the internet somewhere you can go grab. Okay. Yay.
Okay.
Anyone have any other last minute thoughts or questions before we wrap up?
Got nothing.
No? Okay, wonderful. And then I'll stop the recording.